Hey there, legal pagers. So this may be the most candid I have ever been on a podcast. Today, I am sharing with you all my 2019 year in review. So I know we didn't get to air this episode until February of 2020, and I had anticipated doing it a lot sooner, right after we rang in the new year. But honestly, the legal page had a lot going on with our weird mini viral situation, and also some other big laws and legal issues that popped up in January. However, I did want to record this review episode not only for all of you to hear about how my practically first year in business went, but also as a personal reminder to myself about all the ups and downs that I went through, but how at the end of the year it all turned out beautifully and just how it was supposed to, and why I am so blessed to have what I have. Now, let's just say I was ringing in the new year pretty darn hard about a month ago on New Year's Eve because I couldn't wait to put 2019 behind me and move forward into a new year. And I'm going to get into why all in this episode. So without further ado, let's just get into it. You're listening to the Legal Paige podcast, where we chat about life and business with a legal twist. I'm Paige, attorney and photographer helping online businesses and creatives tackle their business dreams without breaking out in hives. No more legal mumbo jumbo. This podcast features simple, bite-sized advice that'll have you legally legit in no time. Are you ready? Let's get started. Okay, you guys, here goes nothing. So 2019 was interesting, emotional, exciting, beyond my wildest dreams, very, 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 very challenging. But overall, I would say the motto was I pivoted really hard multiple times, and it was the biggest learning lesson of my life. So this episode is different than other episodes I have done. I'm not talking about legal stuff. It's very, very, very candid. I don't really have notes. I just made an outline for myself to stay on track so I don't just babble on about something. But I wanted to be really vulnerable with you all and open up, since you've been following along now for 45 episodes of the Legal Page podcast. And also, the Legal Page podcast started at the beginning of 2019. And so I was like, I don't want to miss out on doing my first year in review. And I was almost to the point where I wasn't going to do this episode, but I felt the need that I really, really wanted to share some things with you all, get them off my chest, but also just dissect them through chatting with you all, because a lot of things have been in my head. Okay, so to start out the year in review, I'm going to go back to January 2019. And this is one of my biggest learning lessons. I had this big idea that it was going to be the best idea ever to combine my two businesses into one. So as you all know, I had and have a photography business called Paige Photography. I was building that business up very, very, very progressively over the past 7 years at that point. It's been over 8 now. And then I had just started the Legal Page in September of 2018. So I was getting really sick of going back and forth on Instagram accounts and trying to run two different businesses. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I should just combine these into one. Everybody will understand. And so I made both of them into Paige Marie. I just thought it was a brilliant idea, and I soon learned it wasn't. So I spent about $1,000 on getting pagemarie.com because it was taken. I spent about $3,000 to $4,000 on website design and a brand overhaul, tons of time pouring into my team and hourly, clocking hourly amounts, putting our launch together for this new Paige Marie combined brand. I combined Instagram accounts and tried to think of a very good and cohesive launch strategy so it wouldn't be confusing to people. So all in all, I like to call the Paige Marie issue my $10,000 mistake. It just ultimately, you guys, didn't make sense. And that all came to my attention at the first conference of the year that I spoke at. So I went to Styled Shoots Across America sometime, I think in April. And this was after the launch, and I thought everything was going well. And I was just like chilling at my home in Montana. And then I went to this conference and I got out of my car, and then everyone came over and they were like, oh my gosh, you're the legal Paige. You're the legal Paige. And I was like, wait, how does everyone know my name? And then, throughout that conference, I was like introducing myself as Paige Marie, and no one knew who I was. And then it just clicked. I was like, my name is not Paige Marie. People know me as the legal Paige. So it was like facepalm moment. Like, what are you doing, Paige? Like, what are you doing? And while people appreciated that I had this photography background, they weren't attaching to that Paige Marie photography, like, business as a whole. Like, that needed to be completely separate. So I just pivoted back to where I started. I had a few, when I started this whole thing with Paige Marie and this big idea and combined brand, I had talked to many people who said, you can definitely do it. Like, people will jump on board. It makes sense for you. And then I had other people tell me, these are all industry friends, that, be careful. I think it also makes sense to keep them separate. And in the end, that's what I learned. $10,000 mistake, but sometimes you really, really have to learn the hard way. And I did. So then we had to go back in, and I just want to do a huge shout out here to the Show It team. I have a Show It website. They put together the legalpage.com and pagemariephotography.com into pagemarie.com and had to deal with like hundreds of blog posts combining together and then trying to get all of the pages. And to my website designer, Sarah from Digital Grace Design, she was just a blessing to work with during this whole fiasco. She created such a beautiful website for Paige Marie, but then it split, and then we had to go back to Paige Marie Photography on its own website, and then the legal page on this new website, but switch everything. And both the Show It team and Sarah were awesome to work with, but it took a long time. And then Google had to catch up to speed because we were pretty much screwing around with forward slashes, and Google just couldn't keep up. So it not only was a $10,000 mistake, but it was also probably a big SEO mistake. And then also my Instagram account was like combined, and I had a new name, which was Paige Marie Griffith, because Paige Marie was taken and I couldn't get it. And then I had to go to the legal page, and then I had to go back to Paige Marie Photography. So that's what happened at the beginning of the year. And that's enough about the Paige Marie debacle. But now you all know that I highly suggest, if you have two very different businesses, don't combine them, keep them separate. And good news is now people definitely know who the legal page is. It's on its own separate platform, separate website, separate Instagram account. And Paige Marie Photography is still up and running and doing its own thing on its Instagram. My website is still working well, and we still get inquiries, so that's good. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is workers and team members and hiring on employees and having contractors. This was, quite frankly, one of the biggest lessons for me as a boss, a mentor, a colleague, a friend. So I've recently been reading Radical Candor by Kim Scott. If you haven't read that book and you are a business owner and you have team members, I highly recommend it. She was an exceptional leader and manager in Silicon Valley, worked for Apple, worked for Facebook, worked for Google, and she now helps bosses become better at managing others and really helps bosses get their workers to be better and do better work by being exceptionally candid and creating bullshit-free zones. Now, I wish I could completely rewind 2019 and have read this book at the beginning of the year and also just have all of this knowledge that I have now and background that I have now and experience that I have now. But that's just not how the world turns. And so I'm just going to take you through what 2019 looked like for the legal page and Paige Marie Photography with hiring on team members. So I hired on a full-time employee at the beginning of 2019. It was a friend. It was also someone who was phenomenal at what they do. And I want to give credit where credit is due. And we, yeah, we worked super well together. But there was, of course, I didn't have a separate office. And so she and I did work together in my home office. So that created its own challenges of, not from her standpoint, but from my standpoint, of like separating church and state, separating my business from my personal life. And all of those got really mumble jumbled together. And then I also basically had a really, really secure associate with Paige Marie Photography. So I had worked with this person as a second shooter quite consistently. And then I, asked if she wanted to come on as an employee, but she definitely wanted to stay on as a contractor to run her own business. And that was fine. But then she associated for Paige Marie Photography and shot weddings of her own. And she was great. She was amazing at social media. And she also helped with like culling and editing and like doing everything behind the scenes. I could not have ran Paige Marie Photography without her in 2019. So again, giving credit where credit is due. Thank you, my dear. You are wonderful and I adore you. And you learned so much because I just gave you it all. I was like, I can't do it. Here you go. Please help. And she did, and took on all of that burden on her shoulders and made Paige Marie Photography as successful as it had been for the past 3 to 4 years when I was running it myself. I also brought on more team members, like a copywriter, a social media manager, a website designer, Sarah. She stayed with me throughout the year on retainer. And then other small virtual helpers like graphic designers, a podcast editor. I had a coach as well. I was in a small group coaching experience for becoming a public speaker and doing, speaking events at conferences. And so I hired that out as well. It was like more of a mentor. So yeah, lots of different team members came in and out of the legal Paige and Paige Marie Photography. Then I was navigating payroll. So I've never done that before because I had employees on. And so working with my accountant, I had to get an accountant and they ran payroll. And then I was working with them and then I had to pay, and it just got convoluted and it was a lot. It was just me figuring out how to freaking be a manager. It was not easy. So I don't want to talk about this, but I think I have to because I really haven't been upfront with everyone on social media. And also it took me a really long time to process. So I'm ready to talk about it now, but just know that it's hard. Like right now I'm kind of like touching my sweater and feeling a little clammy. But there was a big moment that happened in August, and really it was simply employee turnover. But because I had so much personally invested into my friendships with my employee and my contractors, I had 2 people leave right around the same time, and it was just a lot. It was challenging. It was emotional. I cried a lot. I also just lost my shit. I just didn't know how to handle it. And looking back, I know that I was overly emotional and I could have handled it differently. But like I've said at the beginning of this 2019 in review, it's all been this big giant learning lesson for me over this past year. And during this moment in August when the employee turnover happened, like I also felt, really taken advantage of, hurt, blindsided. So I also think my emotions were valid. But I definitely just overall did not have thick enough skin to not let it get to me. And it did get to me, and I was a wreck. And I think mainly also there were some personal issues going on as well that I do not discuss and I don't want to discuss. But I was also taking a month off for a sabbatical, which I was trying to do, take a month off in September. And I just felt my world was kind of like crumbling at the end of August because it all happened. And then I like hopped on a plane to go to Europe for 4 weeks. Like my plane ticket home was not for 4 weeks later. And I was taking Marco and his sister over to Europe. They had never been overseas before. So that was a challenge in and of itself. But I was like, it was just so much mentally to handle at one time. And I think it was a lot for like just one single person to do without having like other managers and team members on board. So that being said, again, I just want to point out that it was simply employee turnover. I know that now. But coming back from Europe in the beginning of October, I was like picking up the pieces. I had kind of put the legal page on hold for a month. I didn't have really any help, and I didn't have time to like replace them because I was leaving and jumping on a plane. So I felt like it was like the sign from some higher power that I just needed to take 4 weeks and work on myself and just figure out what I wanted and what I wanted for the legal page, what I wanted for Paige Marie Photography. I went to lots of therapy, just being very honest with you all. I love my therapist and she helped me through a lot of this. I had lots of really good, deep chats with industry friends who've had employee turnover and, in contractor turnover, assistant turnover. And then I read lots and lots and lots of self-help books on working on myself as a manager and boss. I felt very much at that time like everything was on me. Like I did everything wrong. I just felt like I couldn't do right. And I'm sort of getting emotional here. I'm sorry, you guys. I said this was going to be candid, but when lots of things hit you all at once, you feel like if it rains, it pours. And that's how I felt for like a month and a half, 2 months straight. And I felt like I couldn't do anything right. And I felt like I had given so much of myself and, not only monetary amounts to people, but also just like mentorship and friendship. And it was a lot of self-reflection. And I felt that I was in the wrong and I didn't know how to make it right. So in the end, you guys, I am glad that happened. Crazy enough, I'm like looking back at it now. And now thinking about, August, September, October of 2019, like I never want that to happen again, but I can't control what other people do. And I can only control my reactions to it. And my reactions are going to be much different next time. But I've learned a lot from that time period in my life. I know that the friendly boss, the friendly Paige that I was to my workers really didn't work for me as a manager and my personality. So I needed to go from that type of boss to like a boss. And I also learned that from a personal perspective and myself and my personality, it's really, really hard for me to work with my friends. I just integrate way too much of my personal life into those I work around. And it's not healthy. And I just didn't know that I was doing that. And that is on me. But you can't really know that until you kind of have a slap in the face. Like, Paige, that was a really big mistake. So I know I shouldn't have done that. And I've learned to not put my personal life so much into everyone that I'm working with. And so from here on out, I'm definitely not doing that. But to end this little discussion on my workers, I know it was kind of a long discussion, but I will say that the people that have worked for me in 2019, all of you were phenomenal, hardworking, you were ever present, and you were always up for a challenge. You really, really, really did a lot for TLP. You worked your asses off, and I seriously appreciate all that these people did. The Legal Page is not an easy company to work for, because it's all online, it's virtual. There's so many moving parts. It's an online platform and a virtual law firm. It's very complicated. We have probably I swear, 20 to 50 different applications that we use day in and day out. And so that's not for everyone. And it's a lot to take on. It's also a startup. Things happen. Your biggest failures become your biggest lessons and then also help you into your biggest successes. And I think all of that is why keeping an assistant on tap for the Legal Page this entire year has been super challenging. But I know I am going to find the right person. And I think I'm going to have a really, really good team this year. And that is my big goal. I'm going to talk about that at the end of this episode. So that is all on hiring employees and having contractors for 2019. I know that was a lot, but that's just what happened. Alrighty. Now, pivoting hard. I had talked about how pivoting hard was kind of my motto this entire year. One of the big things that happened also with the Legal Page occurred in June, right at the beginning of this year. And also as my photography season was starting to, get really busy. Photography season in Montana is anywhere from about May to September, October. And June I had a lot of weddings. So I was working, nonstop 40 to 50 to 60 hours during the week on the legal page. And then I'd go work all day Saturday on a wedding, Sunday, all day post-wedding production, and then continue on with my week. So it was just a lot. But in June, I decided during all of this, which was, again, a learning lesson, that I wanted to do this massive launch. So I worked for about 2 months prior to that. So April and May, I worked with a launch coach in hopes of my biggest offer ever and hopefully my biggest launch. And this all came from spending the entire 2018 year in Jenna Kutcher's mastermind with other really, really successful women and learning all about launches. And I really wanted to, quote unquote, make it by having what I thought in my mind was like the big old launch that you're supposed to have, quote unquote. Well, that didn't happen at all. And I had a mastermind in the beginning of 2019 and it went really well. And I loved my 16, 17 girls that were in it. And so I was like, I'm going to have a big launch for another mastermind. And we also had a downsell of my Ready Set Legal course, which is kind of my beginner course for online businesses to get legal and legit and protect themselves in no time, but very like hand-holding step-by-step. It's like a, intro online course for people. But it just didn't work. It just didn't work. I had this massive webinar. We had this big launch and then just like no bites. It wasn't working. And I almost threw in the towel, but I didn't. We just had to pivot and we pivoted into just like scrapping, selling the mastermind all together in a webinar and for the rest of the week. And we just went with pushing the Ready Set Legal course because I soon learned that that's what people wanted from me is the legal page was legal stuff. I mean, like, duh. But, you just live and you learn. So there were also like during that time, I'm not going to go into the details, but there was also issues with other people that I had hired on that were friends that just didn't work out. And so it was just like one big snowball at the same time of the launch going awry in June. And then all in all, again, big lesson on being ready for everything before you launch, thinking from your audience's perspective, and just learning the hard way on webinars. I think webinars are challenging, and I know it's how a lot of online businesses push their offerings to their followers, their audience, their email list, but webinars weren't resonating super well for my audience. And so again, I just had to pivot and it wasn't working. And so we did a whole different approach and it did work out. I think I broke even, which is good, or maybe lost like around, $2,000 to $5,000. And it could have been much worse, but I hustled my ass off and I made that launch. Like I tried to make it into something. And so that happened. So pivoting hard was just occurring throughout the entire year, you guys, but June was pretty trying. I next just want to talk about the legal page offerings. 2019 in review, like what all did the legal page offer? Like a lot. And this is where I want to go back and just pat, the 2019 Paige on the back. I created an online shop with hundreds of template contracts, clauses, and bundles. I brought on lots of affiliates to the legal page, which helped put our legal contracts out there into the world and in front of their audiences. I launched multiple online courses. I had a mastermind at the beginning of 2019, and then I launched one at the end of 2019 that is still going right now. I also launched the contract catalog. Oh my gosh, I can't even. You guys, I just told you what happened at the end of August. Let me just put this into perspective. I also forgot at that time, I was launching the contract catalog that week before I was leaving for Europe. And so it was just, everything was all happening that final week of August. Never want to go back to that week. But we launched the contract catalog, which is essentially a platform that hosts all of our template contracts, clauses, and bundles in the legal page. You pay a one-time fee or a monthly fee. We only open it up once a year, and it's your time to get like all of the contracts you'd ever need as an online business at your fingertips. And then we always update it with all of our new contracts, and it's lifetime access. So it's pretty sweet. And that launch went really well. And we did that launch through a video series training. So a 3-part video series. It was, if you remember at all and you followed me back then, it was like that piece of cake contract series launch where I was like eating a bunch of really fun cake, and it went over pretty well. So the contract catalog was easy, simple. I didn't do a webinar, and it resonated well with my audience. So I learned, at that end of August as well, that what my audience wants, like they didn't want webinars so much. And then the biggest offering we had that I love talking about, because I feel like, I'm a big fate person, and I feel like everything everything happens for a reason. I truly, truly believe that. And I came back, and I could have gone when I came back in October from Europe with everything that went down. I felt like if I were someone else, that I compartmentalize things, you guys, like crazy. I'm really good at like putting aside my personal life and my business, or, things in my business that are making me emotional, and just like being the legal Paige and like being the owner of my business. And I did that, and I hustled all by myself. I launched the biggest Black Friday week sale the legal Paige has obviously ever had. It's only had one the year before, since we, started in September 2018. But I really wanted to have a big Black Friday sale, and I wanted to see if I could do it with minimal team members behind me helping. And I also just was like, I'm not going to let myself fall into a deep depression. I could have completely thrown in the towel with TLP, but instead I had the biggest launch I've ever had, and it was so cool. So my Black Friday week sale went beyond what I thought it would. I worked really hard working with affiliates and making sure that all of the contracts were up to date. I spent pretty much all of November doing that. And I also miraculously had one of the best team members come on board the week before the Black Friday week sale. And she is my legal assistant / associate, hopefully soon to be associate if she passes the bar. She's working on it now. She'll be taking it in July. But she is one of the biggest assets to the legal Paige team. And again, fate stepped in and gave me one of the best workers that I hopefully will ever have with the legal Paige. And I will try to keep her on forever because I just adore her. And yeah, we had a really awesome Black Friday week sale that was at the end of November into the beginning of December. And then holiday season went really well with the legal Paige. We had lots of new clients coming on board as kind of, people trying to get rid of 2019 finances and expending money so that they could put that on their tax return. And then just quickly, you guys all know this, but then at the end of December, this is how I rounded out 2019. I went mini viral on some rant that I did on my social media Instagram account. And I just went on a little chit chat with my followers about some influencer issues and giveaway issues, and it blew up. And that is how I ended that last week of 2019, going kind of mini viral, having like 3,000 DMs. I think it was like 2,500 to 3,000, and, going on news channels and getting contacted by multiple news stations, being on BuzzFeed, getting some hate messages, which weren't fun. But at the end of the day, I think that turned out exactly how it was supposed to be, because it opened the doors to this entire new industry that I am excited for TLP to be a part of. So those are all the TLP offerings. Personally, my personal life in 2019, one of the most challenging years of my life. And I'm really, really surprised that I never got super sick, or I never, went to the hospital with a huge anxiety attack or stomach ulcers. I don't like to discuss my personal life very much, so I'll just be really short and sweet here. And this is one of the reasons I let Sugar, my dog, who you all probably know and you've seen on social media, she's here sitting at my feet in my office as I record this episode. I usually have her outside the door just for noise purposes, but she's like my emotional support animal. And I really needed her as I was recording this podcast episode. And this is primarily why. So Marco and I had our challenges this year. I was navigating two businesses, being a business owner of two startup. Well, Paige Marine Photography wasn't a startup, but it was still a growing online business and in-person, service business. One of those businesses was growing really, really rapidly as a startup at, the legal page. Also, at that same time, at the beginning of 2019, Marco had quit his job. He was on the path to teaching professional golf work. And he loved it, but he had this moment where he was like, this isn't for me. This isn't what I want to do with my life. And I fully support that. Like, I don't want Marco to not do what he loves. So he stopped that in efforts to pursue something else. And he was now at home. So we were both at home together, and I was working from home and he was at home trying to figure out his next steps, which is a lot to manage as a newly engaged couple. We had just gotten engaged in August of 2018. And so beginning of 2019, it's like we've been living together for a year and a half-ish, 2 years. And you guys, we have been together for like a decade by this point, but we had actually lived together in the same city at this time for about 2 years. And that's a lot. That's a lot for a couple to work through. And then there's this. So I canceled and postponed our wedding twice for reasons that I do not care to share with you all. And I don't like to talk about with my audience because those reasons are very personal. But I've never been so sad and confused, but also in love with Marco all at the same time. You guys, he is my soulmate. I know that from the bottom of my heart. And please know that we are 100% fine and in love. I just think that, being in the wedding industry for the past decade has really shaped my view of how wedding planning was supposed to go. Like, it's supposed to be all rainbows and butterflies. Well, that's not how it went. And I think postponing your wedding twice is just a lot to deal with. Personally, as a woman and as someone who wants to get married so badly and have a family, but also is like a boss bitch on the other side and loves to grow a business and is obsessed with entrepreneurship. And it just personally like that all, I just felt like on top of everything with my business, like dealing with my personal life, I put a lot of my personal life on the line. And I, again, have learned my lesson there. Now, besides Marco and I and the wedding thing and like, we're fine, you guys, everything's good. I love him. I love our life. Like, we're going to be together forever. Do not worry about that. He is my person. But besides Marco and I was my family. We had a really big family issue this year with one of my closest family members having a very, 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 very serious medical condition. It was not talked about on my social media due to this person's privacy and request, but it took a huge toll on me and my family. And this happened kind of around March to beginning of June. Yeah, so that occurred as well in 2019. And then also, you guys, just having friendships, losing friendships that meant a lot to me, and also learning that some people that I thought were my friends are just not my friends, and it wasn't a two-way friendship. It seemed like a very one-way friendship. So that all went down personally as well. And I let that stuff weigh on me. I'm very empathic, and it hurt. It hurt. And so I felt like my heart was in about 1 million pieces by the end of the year. And that is why I also was ringing in the new year pretty darn hard, because I was like kind of giving 2019 the finger and being like, okay, I got this. Paige is coming back at you in 2020. Alrighty. So that's my life personally. Numbers. I know you all are probably wondering, like, okay, Paige, you've done a lot. You've been through a lot. Like, what was your numbers in 2019? Okay, so they weren't as great as I wanted them to be. I'll say that. But I hit the 6-figure mark in my first year of business, which I think is a huge accomplishment for any startup business, because most startup businesses fail in 1 to 2 years. And I do not see TLP in that trajectory at all. So I made around $110,000 with the legal page. And I also made around $50,000 with Paige Marie Photography, because I was still shooting about 10 to 15 weddings a year. I had an associate. I was shooting like crazy family sessions, mini sessions, and senior sessions. So I think that's pretty good. Like $160K is awesome and a lot. It is a lot. I live in Montana. Like the average salary here is like $30,000 to $40,000. But also, I just expended a lot of that money. So I did not pocket very much. I will say that. Just not a lot. Maybe like 10 to 20,000. So I got a bookkeeper on board. And she has been instrumental in me figuring out my numbers more. I always thought that because I was an econ major and I was really into statistics and math. And then, of course, I did econometrics for my big thesis project in college. And then I went to law school and I am obsessed with business. So I just always thought like I could do my numbers myself. Wrong. Once I got a bookkeeper, I was able to really look at P&Ls a lot differently and see my numbers and hit my goals a lot better. So that is a big, thing that I'm moving forward into 2020 with, is a different vision of my finances. So I want to triple what I made with TLP this year in 2020. I want to triple it. That's my main goal. Money is never my main motivator, but that goal will help me spread my passion of accessible legal education to the online world to more and more people. And that is what I strive for. So you guys, moving forward into 2020, now that I have like all of this back end work in place, I just want to focus more on the front end of advertising and pushing out what the legal page offers. I want to utilize affiliates more. I was not that good at doing that last year. I feel like the legal page shop online is like this gold platter that is like literally handing itself to me, but I haven't really done anything with it. We've never put ads behind it. I haven't really done anything with affiliates very much besides, figuring out that affiliates work with my Black Friday sale at the end of 2019. So I want to use affiliates. I've worked really, really hard in 2019 to go to lots of conferences, be on lots of podcasts, be a part of lots of other people's communities and help them with their, legal questions and concerns. And I want to utilize those people more. Like I've worked hard to create those industry connections and they get a sweet ass kickback in affiliate commission. So yeah, I need to push that more. I don't know why I don't. So that is a big goal. And moving forward into 2020, I also want to get in front of all kinds of different audiences aside from the wedding industry. I was a part of the wedding industry. It's one of the main reasons I started the legal page, because I was so passionate about this gap of legal education in the wedding industry. But now I really love working with dietitians and influencers and bloggers in the health and fitness world. And I really, really want to work on that and foster those relationships more in 2020. I am also maturing into a new TLP brand this year. So the legal page really came to fruition and all of the branding came from my Paige Marie Photography aesthetics. And that makes sense because I was light and bright and pink, and that is my photography style, being very colorful. And it worked well for me for 2019. But then kind of there was this shift at the end of 2019, and I was like, this isn't really how I lawyer. It's not totally me as an attorney. And I am different and I'm fun, and I try to make the legal stuff not scary and more fun and more approachable. And I can do that, but the pink and the blue, the bubblegum pink, like it just wasn't feeling like me. And so as we move into 2020, I'm sure you've been seeing on social media and our website, I'm ready. I'm ready to kind of have a brand refresh. I'm ready to have TLP have its own brand that isn't Paige Marie Photography. And I can do both. So in that same vein, I am doing less and less of photography in 2020 and focusing more on the legal page. 2019 was kind of like, let's do both and see how it goes and see if TLP even works. And it did. So I want to see how giving like 99% of my brain and energy to TLP will help it grow. I am only shooting about 5 weddings this year, and that's it. I don't want to shoot mini sessions, senior sessions, nothing else. Just 40 hours a week or a little bit more devoted purely to the legal page and having some weekends off in the summer, which is going to be glorious. And honestly, I love shooting weddings. I still want to do it. It really massages that creative side in my brain, and I want to continue doing that. I want to, keep my feet in the fire, hand in the cookie jar with photography. I love it. It is one of the main reasons that all of this happened to begin with, was my passion for being a creative and being a photographer. But to be able to serve my wedding clients really well, these 5 this year, I can't do more. I can't do more. And I want to give them the best wedding experience possible that Paige Marie Photography has created. And I know that experience like the back of my hand, and I just can't wait to serve them this year, but I can only serve 5 of them. So I am very, very excited to shoot only 5 and then just not do all kinds of other sessions and just laser in on the legal page. And then lo and behold, I'm sure you all were guessing this, moving forward into 2020, one of my biggest goals is team building. I want to have this like awesome team of women that we just freaking conquer the world. And I'm like, yeah, badass women all on one team. And I think we're getting there. We have some legal interns on board now that I'm super excited about. Like I said, my legal associate is phenomenal, and she's got a brain of just a genius, and she's got so many cool things on the horizon and contributing to TLP, and I just can't wait to do those. We have a lot of new partners that we're working with this year, but ultimately, you can't scale and grow a business when you're just one person. I only have one brain. I only have so much time in the day. I have the same time in the day as Beyonce. And you know what? Beyonce has a freaking team behind her, helping her out and making her be Beyonce. So in that respect, I need a bomb-ass team behind me. And so I am looking to add more team members to my team in very specific niches. I want to give roles and responsibilities to very specific people instead of having like a grab bag unicorn person that does all of it. Because it's really hard to find. I know that's me, but I feel like that's been a learning lesson in 2019. Like I thought I could find a clone of myself, but it's hard. It's really hard to teach everything that's going on in my brain. And people do way better, and I think teams scale way better when you have very specific roles and responsibilities for each team member. So that's my, honestly, the big picture, big goal in 2020. You guys, that is my 2019 year in review. I am so proud where I took this business in the past year. I'm proud of everything I've done. I'm proud of what my team members have done, and I am most excited and proud of all of your support and encouragement along the way. I seriously can't believe that TLP has only been in business since September of 2018. It has been a wild ass ride, that is for sure, but I would not trade it for anything. I love being my own boss. I love not working for the man. I love making my own schedule and being so damn passionate about what I do that I cannot wait to get started and get out of bed every day. And I have a hard time leaving my desk in the evening. That is truly everyone's goal in life, isn't it? And to have found that at 28 years old is just freaking awesome. It feels really good. And so I want to continue that for the rest of my life, if possible. So cheers, 2019. Goodbye. Peace out, 2019. And hello, 2020. Let's do this thing. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Legal Paige podcast. See, I told you being legally legit isn't so scary. Be sure to visit thelegalpage.com for all show notes. And it would be super awesome if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review. Last but not least, don't forget to join my free Facebook group for unlimited legal and biz Q&A. Chat soon, legal pagers.